The studio lights were hotter than usual, or at least it felt that way when Clint Eastwood took his seat at the curved table. The applause rolled in waves, respectful but edged with curiosity, as if the audience sensed they were about to witness something unscripted. Eastwood acknowledged them with a small nod, the kind that carried decades of authority without demanding attention. He looked older, yes, but not diminished, his posture straight, his eyes alert, his presence heavy in the room like a held breath. Joy Behar opened with a joke, quick and practiced, and the table laughed on cue. Eastwood smiled politely, waiting. The conversation began harmlessly enough: film, legacy, the difference between making movies then and now. Eastwood spoke slowly, choosing his words with care, reflecting on discipline, patience, and the responsibility that came with influence. His voice was calm, gravelly, the kind that made even disagreements sound thoughtful. The audience leaned in. The co-hosts nodded, some genuinely, others already preparing their counters. Then Joy steered the discussion toward politics, her tone shifting just a shade sharper. She framed a question that sounded like curiosity but landed like a verdict. Eastwood answered without flinching, talking about personal responsibility, about the value of hearing opposing views without assuming bad faith. He mentioned how outrage had become currency, how conversation often collapsed into performance. A few claps broke out, tentative but sincere. Joy interrupted, smiling, reframing his point as nostalgia masquerading as wisdom. She suggested his views were out of step with the moment, relics from a different era that didn't translate anymore. Eastwood listened, hands folded, eyes steady. When he responded, he didn't push back with fire. He pushed back with restraint. He spoke about the danger of reducing people to labels, about how disagreement didn't have to mean disrespect. The room felt tighter now. A producer shifted behind the cameras. Someone in the audience whispered, "Uh-oh." Joy leaned forward, her voice louder, quicker. She accused him of dodging the real issue, of hiding behind vague language. Eastwood opened his mouth to reply, but she cut in again, talking over him. For a split second, the studio fell into that awkward overlap of voices that television hates and thrives on. Eastwood stopped mid-breath. He waited. The interruption hung there, exposed. When he spoke again, it was softer, but it carried. "If you don't want a conversation," he said, measured and even, "don't invite one." The sentence landed like a dropped glass. Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by scattered applause. Joy blinked, surprised, then bristled. She shot back immediately, accusing him of being thin-skinned, of walking away whenever challenged. Eastwood's jaw tightened, just slightly. He leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving hers. "I've been challenged my whole life," he said. "That's not the issue." The co-hosts exchanged glances, unsure whether to jump in or stay silent. The producer's voice crackled faintly through an earpiece. The red light on the camera glowed, unblinking. Joy pressed harder now, her tone edged with frustration. She questioned his relevance, his willingness to adapt, his understanding of the current climate. The audience split audibly, some clapping, some groaning. Eastwood raised a hand, not dramatically, just enough to signal he wanted to finish a thought. Joy kept talking. He lowered his hand. That was the moment. Eastwood exhaled, a long, controlled breath. "I'm not here to be scolded," he said quietly. There was no anger in it, only finality. The room went still. A producer stepped into view, murmuring something about time and moving on. Eastwood nodded, once, as if he'd already made his decision before anyone else caught up. He stood, buttoned his jacket with deliberate calm, and turned to the audience. "Thank you for listening," he said, emphasizing the last word. Applause erupted, louder now, mixed with confusion. Joy protested, saying no one was kicking him off, that this was just a discussion. Eastwood didn't argue. He simply nodded again, offered a brief glance around the table, and walked off set as the cameras scrambled to cut away, leaving behind a buzzing studio and a moment that would soon belong to the internet. The moment the cameras cut, the studio didn't calm, it fractured. Crew members whispered in urgent bursts, producers waved tablets filled with rapidly updating social feeds, and the audience buzzed like a hive that had just been struck. Within minutes, a raw clip of Clint Eastwood's exit hit the internet, stripped of context and drenched in outrage. Accounts on every platform posted the same frozen frame: Eastwood standing, jacket half buttoned, Joy Behar mid-sentence. The captions wrote themselves. Some declared him kicked off. Others insisted he'd stormed out. The truth, as usual, was messier and less convenient. Backstage, Eastwood moved with unhurried calm. He thanked a camera operator, shook hands with a stage manager, and paused to ask an intern her name. "Good work in there," he told her, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. A publicist asked if he wanted to issue a statement. Eastwood declined. "It'll say more without one," he said, his voice steady, almost gentle. He left the building through a side door, the city noise swallowing him whole. Online, the clip went feral. Hashtags bloomed across timelines, turning the clash into a cultural Rorschach test. One side praised Eastwood as a legend who refused to be talked over, a man who demanded respect in a room addicted to interruption. The other side framed him as out of touch, unable to handle scrutiny, proof that age and authority were finally being challenged on live television. Commentators slowed the footage down, analyzed facial expressions, counted interruptions, and debated tone like it was evidence in a trial. Overnight, the moment became a proxy war for everything else. The next morning, Joy Behar addressed it on air. She insisted no one had been kicked off, that the show thrived on debate, that passion was part of the format. She joked lightly, but there was an edge beneath it. "If you can't handle a little pushback," she said, "maybe live TV isn't for you." Applause followed, though it sounded thinner than usual. The co-hosts nodded, but their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. Eastwood remained silent. No tweets, no late-night rebuttals. The absence spoke loudly, infuriating some, intriguing others. Then a different clip surfaced, short, grainy, shot on a phone. It showed Eastwood backstage, moments after the walk-off, shaking hands with crew, thanking people by name. He smiled. He laughed softly at something a stagehand said. The narrative wobbled. If he'd been enraged, why did he look so at ease? Pundits adjusted their takes. Some softened, others doubled down. A columnist wrote that the incident revealed a deeper problem, conversations designed for conflict, not understanding. Another argued it was proof that generational divides had become unbridgeable on television built for soundbites. Ratings spiked. Advertisers watched closely. The machine kept turning. Weeks later, Eastwood gave a rare interview to a small, unflashy outlet. No graphics, no shouting. When asked about the viral clash, he paused. "I don't mind disagreement," he said. "I mind not being heard." He spoke about the difference between debate and performance, about how interruption had become a shortcut to dominance. "If we're not listening," he added, "we're just waiting to talk." The clip circulated, quieter but persistent, like a countercurrent. The View moved on to the next controversy, as it always did. New guests, new arguments. The table remained the same, but the image lingered in the public imagination, an aging icon standing up, not in fury, but in refusal to be flattened into a punchline. For some, it was arrogance. For others, dignity. The argument never settled. Months later, fans still referenced the walk-off. Memes faded, but the clip endured, resurfacing whenever conversations about civility, media, and respect flared up again. It became shorthand for a larger question: what happens when listening stops being part of the format? In the end, no one officially won the clash. There were no apologies, no retractions, no reconciliations on air. Just a moment, frozen in time, reminding viewers that sometimes the loudest statement isn't the one shouted across a table, but the one made by standing up, buttoning a jacket, and choosing to leave the noise behind.